Hey guys and gals, welcome back. I'm really glad you're here. Today we're going to talk about rear suspension, particularly on a Mopar, but the principles are going to apply to other makes, and we'll probably mysteriously allude to a few other things as well. So before we get into it, let's watch the show intro. I'm Mike, and this is my car's shop.
Working out of a 100-year-old refurbished barn, bringing 35 years of experience to projects considered beyond repair. Vision, creativity, and problem solving are essential tools in this place. Watch as we transform junk into polished metal miracles. This is My Car's Shop.
I have had a lot of topic suggestions for the channel, and that got me to thinking that probably the diehards on the channel really like it when I do these whiteboard episodes, so I even made some inquiries and got some more topics. And I'm sure that if you wanted to drop some comments down there with some more things you'd like me to discuss, if I know anything about it, I'd be happy to address those too. I try to do these whiteboard episodes when I don't have a lot of time, or as is the case right now when I'm dealing with a physical problem where it's really not practical, nor should I be working on things in the shop. So there's a lot of progress I've made as far as ordering and purchasing parts. I ordered the fuel gauge for the 47. The new starter is here for the 47. Getting ready to get that front grille painted. I've got another car coming next week from a friend of mine. She's bringing over her Pontiac Spitfire, Starfire, Sunfire, no, something. Little yellow two-door coupe that needs a little paint work, so we're going to get to share some higher-end paint repair because there's a scratch in the quarter panel, so that'll be coming soon. But I've been violating doctor's orders for about 6 or 8 weeks, and some of you have been asking graciously. I appreciate what happened, what's going on, and I'm just going to summarize it all and quote our good friend Duddy from Duddy's Adventures and say, poor life decisions and parental disappointment are what I've been dealing with the consequences of. So just getting old, and choices I've made in my younger years are coming back to bite me. So that's the way it is. I share more with you guys here about stuff that I deal with more than anything, because I just want you to understand why I'm not diving back into the frame project on the Challenger or other things. I've not only been busy and traveling, but I've just, again, as you've experienced, for those of you who've been here for a long time, once in a while, something just from the past just kind of comes back to bite me and slows me down for a while. And that's good, because it gives me opportunity to reevaluate. All right, enough talking. Good Lord, let's get into the project. Or no, it's not a project. It's get into the episode. Well, a couple of weeks ago, my good friend Chris, affectionately whom we call Creeb, was here with his son to help me on a project of burying an electrical line from the barn back to our family campground at the back of the property here. And of course, when people come here, they want to get rides in the cars. So I took Carter out in the 68 Pro Street GTS and really unleashed that beast in a lot harder than I have in years. So if you go through the numbers and the math that we've covered on the show here, I have a 6,000 RPM chip in that motor to keep me from splattering that 360 all over the road. I was doing burnouts with the line lock through first, second, third gear all the way up to almost 6,000 RPM. And when I was edging past about 5,500, I started getting a lot of wheel hop. Now there's two reasons for that. For one thing, that's way too much tire speed, really. But God, it's fun when you're cooking the tires that hard. And I admit I was showing off just a little bit for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, so the tire speed on the back end of that car was approaching speeds of upwards of 120 miles an hour, because with that 457 gear and those 31-inch tires going through the numbers, when the engine hits about 6,000 RPM, it's about 120 miles an hour, which is what the car was designed to do in the quarter mile. If you want to know what the ET is for that, you go calculate it. The engine that's in it right now probably wouldn't do that in a quarter mile, even with 200 shot of nitrous, but it would be darn close. So you can do the math on that. Anyway, I'm digressing. So it made me think about wheel hop, which made me think about rear suspension design, which made me think about the rear suspension design that I never finished on that car, that I'll get into at some point, maybe today, maybe not. But I really want to talk a little bit about the rear suspension on that car and why it was wheel hopping. So this really is going to apply to any Mopar in particular, and there's a differentiation here between the Mopar rear leaf springs, because that's what that car has on it. It was built to be a street car, and the other brands of rear leaf springs. And of course GM also used coilovers with a three-link or a four-link design, etc., etc. But what I really want to spend a little time talking about is leaf springs, why you get wheel hop, what axle windup is, and the difference between Chrysler and other brands of leaf springs. So that sounds like a lot to talk about, but it's probably not really going to be. Chrysler leaf spring design, first of all, where a lot of companies use a leaf spring, and we're not getting into eyelet design and all of that stuff. We're just talking simplicity here. We're talking about multi-leaf, not mono-leaf, okay? So where there's several leaf springs in the pack, a lot of companies put the axle directly in the middle of the spring. Chrysler doesn't do that, and they haven't forever. I don't think they ever did. Again, multi-leaf pack, that's fine. Chrysler tends to put its leaf springs in the car with its center point, or not its center point, but its axle, more offset towards the front. So I'm laying that out for you because this is part of what happens when you get axle windup. So where on these vehicles, to some degree, you get spring flexion here and here, on a Mopar, this from here to here is fairly solid, and your springing is done back here. Now, and that's not 100%, so please don't, flame in the comments about technicalities. I'm only speaking in general ideas and general principles here. So the reason for that on a Chrysler versus other brands is when you have a spring that has this extra distance here, spring windup is a big thing on launch. So when these tires hook, okay, so your car is spinning this way, your tire is spinning this way, this is the front of the car, the spring wants to lift this way, right? So when you have more distance here to here, this spring will actually start to deflect the other way some. So it starts to bend, okay? And that axle tube bends the opposite, because for every action there's an opposite and equal reaction. So the tire spins this way, which means that the axle is spinning this way, causing the spring to flex up here. Now, if you're thinking ahead of where I'm at, you can obviously see that when this distance here is smaller, the amount of deflection here on when that tire is spinning is going to be much less, because this is a lot more solid in here. So Chrysler went one step further with that on some of their Hemi 4-speed and big block 4-speed cars, and maybe, I'm not sure, on some of the small block stick cars, but they did what they call the super stock spring, which again has that same offset. Its springing is back here, and I have a set of super stock springs around here somewhere. But the idea here is that up front this is even thicker, so there's less chance of deflection. So you can see why very commonly people use the old bolt-on traction bars on a GM to stop this spring deflection here from winding up as bad. They're generally not used as much on a Mopar. Now, I do have them on the GTS, and I only threw them on there as a safety measure until I've completed the rear suspension, which I've never done. I've engineered a rear suspension design for that car using leaf springs. If you want to know what it's like, it's basically my own take on a set of Caltrax bars. So maybe someday we'll talk about that. So anyway, I threw a set of the old school bolt-on traction bars on that car just to stop some axle wind-up, just for safety, because I don't want to break a spring or really twist something up and twist off an axle. The other thing that Mopar used from the factory on this, just so that was different than any other manufacturer, and I'm just going to touch on this briefly. In order to stop this wind up more on the differential, so this is our differential here, and the drive shaft goes in here and goes up to the front, they used a snubber right here that smashes against a special plate on the frame. So when this axle does start to wind up, it hits here, lifting up on the body of the car. And when it lifts up on the body of the car here, for practical purposes, it puts more downforce here on the rubber down to the concrete. Now that's geometry, and I'm not going to get into the geometry of all of that, because although I understand it in theory, could I explain it to you? Not without spending about 3 or 4 hours reviewing how all of that works. But just take my word for it, that's what it does. And this is well documented on the web, so you can search that. So pinion snubber on a Mopar to cause more downforce and to prevent axle windup. So the axle, here's the body, here's the pinion, the car launches going that way. The pinion snubber comes up, smashes that plate, lifts up the body, which puts more downforce on the tires, and you get more traction. Okay, so I'm going to keep this simple. This is our offset again. This is a Mopar spring. So what happens to get axle windup? And when you get wheel hop? Is this thing loads up, and I don't have super stock springs on that car because, again, I was going to my own design of Caltrax type of system. I was going to go ladder bars with sliders or floaters originally, but I decided to go more of a Caltrax setup, but my own build. But anyway, axle windup happens, and this spring starts to deflect the opposite way as we were talking. Then, so this is winding up, the tire's hooking. And what happens is the tire will start, as this lifts up more, because it doesn't have a pinion snubber on that car because of the way it's tubbed, or even on any other car, if the pinion snubber is not adjusted properly, there's not enough downforce, so the tire starts to lose traction as this winds up. When the tire starts to lose traction, of course, this spring unloads, bangs back down to its normal position, tire slams back down to the pavement and hooks, which causes spring deflection, winding it up again, which causes the tire to lose traction, which in turn causes the spring to unload. And so I just described to you exactly what wheel hop is. And so that spring loading and unloading is where wheel hop can come from. Now that's not to be confused with wheel hop that you get on a slick. That's tire shake. That's a form of wheel hop, but that's a much different thing. We can talk about that at some point if you're interested in tire shake on like a top fuel funny car or something like that, a pro stock even, but that's not the point of this. So in a leaf spring design, that rear wheel hop comes from that spring loading and unloading and the car gaining and losing traction. And that's why the back of the car starts to really shake. So I'm sure that on the back of my GTS at 120 miles an hour, which I haven't had it up to that speed in quite a few years, those back tires are probably a little bit got flat spots on them. And when that thing got going that hard, that fast at 120 in a burnout, it started to bounce a little bit from the tires, which exaggerated all of this. And it's you can see the chatter marks out on the road out there where those tires were bouncing a little bit. It was quite a thrill, quite fun actually. To prevent that wheel hop, you simply need to stop that spring from loading and unloading, which prevents that tire from gaining and losing traction. And there's a number of ways we can do that. Super stock springs, pinion snubbers, Caltrax bars, ladder bars, ladder bars with floaters. We can get into all of that at another time, but I wanted to talk today a little bit about the leaf spring design and why you get wheel hop on a leaf spring car. Drop those questions down there in the comments. If you haven't liked and subscribed to the channel, why not? You watched this far. It would do us a lot of good. It would do you some good because there's a lot more technical information coming, and we are going to be hot and heavy back in the builds. I did stop today to check on the passenger side rear quarter panel that I ordered back in April, believe it or not. It's still on back order. It was a good thing I stopped because the local auto parts where I buy my body panels through, the manager retired, and I didn't know that, and he was the only one in the shop that knew what was going on with that. Fortunately, the new manager is a guy I've known for the last 25 or 30 years. The employee I didn't know, he didn't know me, but Jeff in the back heard my voice and hollered up if it was me, and I said yes, and he came up and took care of me, and there was no paperwork on it, but he called the warehouse, and they had it there on their back order list, and so he knows who it is now. He'll call me as soon as it comes in. They have 25 quarter panels on order right now just for that auto parts distribution through AutoWares. So probably going to be a while, but I'm not ready yet. Next steps on that, I need to get a rear bumper ordered because I'm not far from testing the rear bumper fitting on the car with the new quarter panels and the trunk floor, and making sure the frame horns on the back are right, and there's just a lot of stuff there, so we need to get that done. I'm really excited to get a bumper and put the taillights back in and just check everything out and see how that is, and put a rear end under that again, because we want to put a rear end under that car and push it outside for a while, just get a bunch of cars out and take pictures. Okay, a lot more coming, as I said. I appreciate you being here. Drop those questions down there. Subscribe, like, do all that stuff. We're on Facebook and Instagram /mycarshop. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but there'll be another episode because we put out episodes every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. So we'll see you on the flip side. Rock on, guys.